on the bar. Okay, and then again, if there's questions that come up throughout this, please let me know. I gotta hit continue, I guess. And another housekeeping, in terms of format, this presentation is not just a presentation straight out where I talk to you and you listen. I'm going to be flipping it around. So it's going to be also a workshop. I'm going to be asking you to do some things. And so I just want you to be prepared for that. I'm a teacher. I teach at Duxbury High School. That's kind of where my heart is. I tried my stint in administration and hated it. So I retired back to the classroom to do what I love. So as a teacher, I don't like to just sit there and lecture. I want my students doing work. I want them engaging. So I'm going to kind of flip that around for this presentation as well. And I'll tell you what you need to do when I get to that slide. Okay, so you're yelling at me. Okay, cool. Back up. Awesome. So I have an office in Norwell. I started this practice, it feels like yesterday, with the goal of helping solve problems in the home. And what started off as tutoring evolved into what you see today, where as a practice, we have a team of coaches. I'm humbled to say that there's probably 12 coaches on the team today, filling different roles within their expertise and background, all master's level professionals with different specialties. So helping families and helping students and helping young adults. And so you can see, if you go in to meet the team, you can see what we're all about. It's definitely really an amazing journey that I'm on, where I can connect with communities like Weymouth, which is where my heart is. Weymouth is the reason I became a special ed teacher. I ran the exceptional program in Weymouth, and it's real. And that informed a lot of the decisions I made in college in terms of the degree path I went down, and really where I am today. So to get asked to present to you was an automatic yes. I thought, well, that's great. I've been wanting to connect with Weymouth for years, or reconnect to Weymouth for years. I have longtime friends and families that I stay in touch with in Weymouth. So this has been a really nice opportunity. So giving back to the community is really important in the work we do. One thing that we've just launched, just to kind of a quick pitch, is in the past 6 months, we've launched a parent membership group, which is our way of empowering parents in a community-like environment where they no longer feel isolated and alone, where they have an ongoing relationship with not only coaches, expert coaches, to help guide them through the process, but also each other, where they have a parent group that they can feel supported by. So this is Courtney Edmond is the director of this program, and you will not meet a more impassioned parent who has raised a child of her own with that is twice exceptional. And so her journey has informed a lot of the work she does. And so to empower parents is an opportunity for parents that feel they want to connect and get answers, and stay, really stay, really hands-on with the community that gets them. Right. And so check it out. This is the barcode becomes helpful. You can't just click on a link in this type of presentation. You have to actually, so that's where the barcode becomes helpful. So if you want to learn more, feel free to check it out, and hopefully it helps. So just to kind of get us focused, okay, what is our point here? So typically we as parents typically have a similar goal, right? And that goal informs a lot of the work we do as parents. It informs what we do and don't do. It informs the decisions we make with our children and the decisions we don't make with our children. So I like to kind of frame this out as a starting point to these type of conversations, so it keeps us grounded and puts our attention into into kind of that overarching umbrella theme or mission as we as parents. I am a parent. I have 2 children, and they inform all the work I do. They become my guinea pigs as much as my students in trying to do the best job I can as a dad and as a father. But I'm not just a professional doing this work. I go home and also have to, tuck in a 13-year-old and a 7-year-old. So it's, but to be able to live this life on both sides of the fence, professionally and personally, is very, it's really awesome. So the presentation goal is really to give parents tangible and actionable solutions so that you can walk away from a presentation like this with solutions to a problem that's on your mind. Let's say a problem. I suspect there's more than just one, but keep it focused, keep it simple, and we can leave here feeling like this was worth our time. Okay, so with that goal of helping our children by teaching them how to solve their own problems and become independent learners, and independent problem solvers. Okay. So in preparation for this presentation, there's 3 things I'm going to ask you to do. One is you're probably going to want a notebook. If you don't have one already, get one. I'm going to require you to do some work in it if you want to make the most of this time together, right? So that notebook, just like our kids, is going to give you a chance to think and make decisions. All right. I'm going to give you a chance to do that during this presentation. So I want you to, first of all, grab a notebook, and I want you to have one child in mind. Yes, David, but I have 3 of them. That's okay. Keep it simple. Just think of one. All right. Just for this conversation. And the third thing I'm going to ask you to do is I want you to be open to doing less as a parent. Okay. Sometimes we join these conversations because we're working so hard to try to help our children, even as much as compensate for their challenges, right? And to fill these gaps. I'm just going to say, for the sake of this presentation and for outcomes, try to imagine that an outcome will be you doing less and maybe our children starting to do more, right? And I'll show you how to do that. Okay. So first exercise with your notebook, if you're keeping up with me, let me know if you need me to pause so that you can catch up. First thing, I want you to write down who's on your mind. Just write their name down. Okay. And I want you to write down under their name one unsolved problem that you can think of. Just one unsolved problem. It can be a big one. It could be a small one. Doesn't matter. No judgment here. Just one problem that you'd like to have solved or resolved as a result of this presentation. Okay. Second part to that is under that. What would it look like if your child was able to solve this problem? Just think in that terms. What would it look like? All right. So I'm going to take a deep dive here. Okay, y'all ready for this? Because I'm going to give you guys, I'm going to be a teacher for a second, and I'm going to educate you on some important terms. So what you're looking at is a kind of a GIF file. It's an image that plays out as a kind of a movie scene or a video. But what you see is kind of a working model, a theoretical model in a way that takes 2 constructs: executive function and self-regulation, right? And it takes these 2 constructs and it shows how they relate. It is the best model that I've seen out there to encapsulate the work that our what goes on inside their heads, right? With a cognitive process. So what we do is we kind of get stuck in the behavioral aspect of things. Oh, my kid is disorganized, right? My kid can't tell time. But what I want us to take a minute to is I want you to kind of look under the hood, and I want us to look cognitively at what's going on, okay? So the stimulus is the input of information. The information comes in, right? You have kind of that automatic response that can play out with certain responses. With an ADHD child, that might look like the hyperactive impulsivity that may play out, right? And we see that. It's okay. As they get older, As they get more mature, as they learn skills, it's less impulsive, because what ends up happening is you have a stopgap. There's a point in time in their cognitive processing where they catch those thoughts and they filter that through the blue section. Make sense? And information comes down through the red section, right? And then it gets caught. So instead of responding, it gets caught, some type of awareness, some type of moment. Maybe it's a social pressure, but I'm not going to call out in the middle of class anymore, right? I'm going to raise my hand. So I'm not going to blurt out answers, what I might have done. I'm going to catch that thought and I'm going to filter it. I'm going to filter it through an intentional self-regulation process. It's that intentional self-regulation that gets their child to their frontal lobe, thinking and evaluating and planning. Got it? It's in that time, it's in that space where they're using their executive function skills, their executive function processes. And then they make a deliberate action based on that process. Okay? So this is just a really cool model to understand that executive functioning or executive function skills do not take place in isolation, right? Where we have to start is in self-regulation skills, right? We have to start there and teach our kids how to catch those thoughts, how to catch that thinking, and how to then apply deliberate attention, deliberate cognitive processes, planning, decision-making, problem-solving, reflecting, evaluating in order to make a decision, okay? So there are 3 cognitive processes that typically play out as being part of executive functions. And again, there are so many theoretical models out there, parents, right, that I get overwhelmed with them all. Every time you read something, there's a different interpretation of executive functions. I'm only talking about the cognitive processes. I'm not talking the behavioral ones, the ones that are observable. I think you all know enough to know what those might be. Disorganization, right? Poor time management because you see them scattered. Right? There's all these kind of symptoms of the executive dysfunction. I just want us to look at it from a working memory standpoint, which is significant. It's not talked about enough. The other one is inhibitory control, which is really self-control, right? How do I manage my thoughts and impulses in a deliberate way, right? That's that kind of that red to blue area, right? And then cognitive flexibility. How do I evaluate and switch gears, transition? We kind of see it as a rigidity sometimes, or a stubbornness, but really that can play out as more of a cognitive skill gap around being able to see different solutions to a problem. So I get rigid in my thinking because I see the one solution that may not be the best one, but it's the one I see, and that's the one I want to stay with. Right? Okay, so there's these cognitive processes that play out. So in self-regulation, so Albert Bandera, you don't have to know who he is. He's just a guru of self-efficacy, but he's also one of the leading researchers in self-regulation theory. And he talks about self-regulation in 3 domains, really, around monitoring, judging, and reacting. So I monitor, I judge my behavior based on internal and external variables, and then I react. Self-regulation, I say in our work too, that we do self-regulation coaching. Why? I want to coach my student, my client, coach them to get better and better at filtering information through their frontal lobe, right? So if I can teach them self-talk strategies, great. If I can teach them breathing techniques, great. I just want to help them to filter information to stay out of their amygdala and to get that information up to their frontal lobe where they can apply logic and reasoning. Now, this would be a time in a classroom where I've just dumped a whole bunch of kind of content on you, and then I would filter questions and answers, because I don't know if you're really into this type of theoretical and content, you probably have a lot of questions that you want me to continue to dig into. But I don't know if that's really the point of this presentation. So I may have to just move through that and maybe take those kinds of questions later, or have a separate presentation on just geeking out on the theories of it and terminology. But what this means is, if I can help my child regulate their thoughts, regulate their emotions through that red section, then I'm going to help them also move into that attentional awareness piece, where that gate, where I help them see the information, see the feelings, or feel the feelings, catch those thoughts, and then consciously apply executive function skills to a problem, which is why we started this lesson with think about a problem, right? I want them to see, but I can't have them solve a problem if they're dysregulated. It's not going to happen. Nope, you're too dysregulated. Your emotions are not allowing you to get into your frontal lobe. Not a good time for us to be problem solving. Go take your time out, come out, and we'll talk when you're calm. Right? That's why that 3, 2, 1 timeout, it can last as long as your kid can respond to it. Or I should say 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3 timeout. To add a little bit of complexity to this conversation, we know that our children may not be developmentally where their peers are. And that can fall under a couple of developmental lagging areas of maybe intellectually, maybe emotionally, maybe socially, which means that that means the gap is a little bigger, right? So they have some challenges. Maybe they have attentional challenges to begin with, right? Maybe they have executive function challenges to begin with, but then there may be this other factor, this comorbid in a way factor, which emotionally and socially they're behind, they're lagging in these developmental milestones, which makes things more complicated because they know that. And so the standard's up here, yet they're here developmentally. So that stress of covering that gap can be pretty overwhelming. So we as parents and as educators have to be aware of that truth and recognize that they'll get there, but we can't force that jump. We can't force that leap. We just have to support them, teach them, guide them. So over time, they cover that gap. So by the time they leave our house, maybe by college, they've covered that gap to the point, or they've compensated in skill areas to meet that difference. Okay. Oh, to add another layer to this challenge, we have the I generation aspect of things, the dopamine-rich stimuli that pounds at our children every single moment, right? Where they are constantly at battle between what I feel like, what is interesting and what is necessary. It's like logic and emotion constantly at battle, because nothing is more interesting than a video game. Nothing is more interesting than 16 clicks deep in YouTube, because that's just a dopamine accelerated environment, which is like motion, emotion, motion. So the logic kind of gets weaker and weaker as I kind of fuel that fire, fuel that relationship. So this just makes it harder. It just makes it harder. And for us as parents, it's hard for us, but it's 10 times harder for them. 10 times. I showed this picture to one of my coaches. She's like, "Is that your son?" Because kind of in a way, it looks like a child version of my son, John. It's like, no, that's not him. I don't know who that boy is. So, quick question. Think for a second, okay? Turning the table on you. Consider the current state of affairs of your child's developmental age. Now consider the priorities and expectations that frame your family values, right? What's my child's developmental age? Just reflect on that. It's really important. What we may want for our children intellectually, emotionally, behaviorally, what we may want for them, they may not be able to manage. They may not be able to achieve right now without supports, without us meeting them where they are. So what age appropriate expectations are beyond the development age? I would say for so many of our kids, we give them a cell phone too early. They're not ready for it. And then we battle it because we think they are, or their age requires that they are, because socially it's what everybody's doing. But now we have to deal, we have to deal with their inability to regulate that. I'm just an example. It's a tough example because it's a hard topic, but it's a good example of what can happen when we give our kids, or we treat them as being able to handle something that they should be from an age standpoint, but developmentally, it's too much without scaffolding or supports. Okay, so I'm going to jump right into building executive function skills. And I'm going to do this, I'm going to try to do this thoughtfully so that you all keep up. I usually don't do this section right away. I usually do it after I talk about some other areas, but I'm going to see how it goes. You're going to kind of you have to give me some feedback on this, but I feel like if we only have time to cover so much, I have to get into this piece of it. I want you walking away with concrete information on how to build EF skills with your kids. So if you have younger children, boredom and downtime are the best things you can do to promote free time and creativity and build three concepts, really: autobiographical planning, metacognitive skills, future planning skills. This little, the QR code will take you to an autobiographical, just a YouTube clip that I put together on autobiographical planning. But in essence, autobiographical planning is something we do when we give our minds a chance to be still and calm. If we are constantly in a state of overscheduled and screened out, we never get a chance to decompress, to filter, to reflect on our past and ponder our future. We don't get a chance to worry about what might be a future concern. And then we don't get a chance to filter through that worry as it relates to possible solutions or causes or interventions. We don't get a chance to do any of that. So without getting a chance to do any of that, we just move on, but those concerns pile up, right? And we don't get a chance to really evaluate and see and write a future story related to. So the video has a lot to do. I drive by a school bus and there's kids outside waiting for their bus and they're like this. Actually, I can just do this. They're like this, waiting for the school bus. They're middle schoolers, right? So in that moment, they're about to take on the burden of their day. Like the burden of middle school. They're about to walk into the lion's den of middle school. But do you think they're pondering what first period is going to look like? Or what second period is going to look like? Or the stress of the fourth period quiz? Nope, they are not. And that's a problem, right? Because they're not evaluating, they're not getting that chance to anchor and see their future and therefore process it before it happens. So when it does happen, it's too immediate, right? And they may not be able to handle it. And then the stress built up goes over the top.
Dr. Murphy, would you say this is kind of like a negative way, like how, like, you know, as an adult, we kind of like use our phones as a distraction from the stressors, whereas you're kind of saying like the kids will kind of not think about their responsibilities because they put that screen in front of them. So they're not kind of like letting their mind kind of like think about their day, think about their goals, think about their responsibilities.
Yeah, and of course, it's not intentional, Kim. You know that it's not something like you're intentionally trying to hide. It's just.
I mean, I do it intentionally, but I don't want my kid doing that.
Yeah, I think we put a tremendous burden on our children, They have to rise up to a really high level of expectations. And whether it's sports alone can set that tone. Add on top of that, the standards set to them in terms of academic performance. And then we take away, not we, but in a way, this conversation, this isn't a conversation of judgment or anything. It's not like, oh, I shoulda, coulda, woulda. No, it's just to reflect. The screens prevent a really important process from taking place. That's all, right? Or the overscheduled kid that goes hard all day long and never has a chance to just decompress for 2-3 hours. So it's just something to think about as we look at what does it take to build EF skills. This is where it starts. What we jump into is, okay, David, all right, I can't change the past. No, you can't. Okay, so what do I do as I think about the times I have with my child? I'm about to go into vacation break. Great. How do I take a vacation time as an opportunity to foster cognitive skills around that relate to self-regulation and executive functioning? There's all sorts of options. Some would say just go be out in nature. That's a great place to start. Why? It's a time to think and be creative and just be down and just be still. Like all of that can promote a very powerful coping skill. That's okay. So there's just a list of options. And again, it's not about any one of these being a golden ticket. It's not about that, right? But giving our children a chance to engage in games, board games, it's hands down just one of the best family elements, right? Just connecting with your family is super powerful. Life gets really complicated. It's more complicated if I don't have a strong connection with my parents. Okay, so board games is a great way to connect with your kids if they're young enough to still want to hang out with you. So my 13-year-old's about that level. She's like, board games? I don't know about that.
You said you have a 7 and a 13?
7, 13, yes.
Yeah, so like, do you have any like go-to games where you have like kind of like a developmental gap between 7 and 13 where their interests are probably, because I have very similar.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah.
Of course, that's the hard part. The teenager has to bring it down. she's got to find some. You got to, they have to have a reason to come to the table that does nothing to do with the board game except just wanting to hang out. Or like, John, my son will play on dad's team if we're going to raise up a level in the board game.
Okay, there's an idea.
It's you try to make it work. And personal story, if you guys want to hear it. So my wife had to work this afternoon. I'm obviously getting ready for this presentation, and she had to catch up with work. She's like, mom guilt through the roof because she had to finish with work and she had a 7-year-old that she had to take care of. I said, just go tell him to go be creative. She's like, he's not gonna be able to be creative. Just go tell him to be creative. And I wasn't sure if he was gonna pull this off, but she sends me a picture. She goes, and it was him in the basement. He had built, they're not Legos, they're like Lincoln logs. Like they're like just wooden blocks, like old school colored wooden blocks. And he had built all these kind of race car things. I don't know how long it took him, but it was it was kind of like a win in the parent column for once, where my kid wasn't kicking my wife in the shin wanting her attention. He actually went away and did something creative. And those are like little wins, right? But if you build on those become kind of positive examples of what we're talking about. So now I'm going to get into something that's kind of a deep dive into, okay, how do I intentionally start to help my child move into future planning mode? And how do I help my child use executive function skills to transition more effectively between time and space? Okay, helping them answer very cognitive based questions, open-ended metacognitive questions. What does my ideal morning look like? What do I want to feel? How do I want to feel when, for example, how do I want to feel at the end of my morning? How do I want to feel at the end of my homework? Right? When I get this done, I want to earn. So there's certain kind of questions we're going to start tackling. What I'm going to talk about next is visual scaffolding. Okay. Before I leave this page, that QR code will take you to a conversation around incentives. Incentives are important. If you have a child with ADHD, they typically don't want to do what's not interesting. Okay. That's a strength if it's applied towards areas that they're passionate about and they can build a career around, right? Until then, it can be somewhat of a catch-22, and you have to help them move through those moments when they feel like getting started with an undesirable task feels overwhelming, right? So we're going to take Samantha, for example. And so one thing we did with Sam is we went around her house and we took pictures of her visually doing the task that she did. We came up with all the tasks related to her morning. Okay. Sam said, this is what I want to be doing in my morning. Mom was like, I agree. This sounds great. Okay. And so we went around the house and just took pictures, and she was in charge of it all. All right. She gave me the camera, she posed, like, okay. So we took these pictures and then we started to organize them, visually organize them. And then we started to put those pictures into a meaningful representation of her ideal self. And see that last picture? That's the question that I asked. What does it look and feel like at the end of my morning? Well, it looks like me as a rock star by the front door with my backpack on with a smile on my face, ready to head out the door at 7:25. That's what it looks like. And it feels pretty good. And it feels pretty good. And on top of that, I said, what do you want to earn for all the attention you're putting into that morning routine? She's like, oh, she wanted a hug from mom. I think that was it. It was like the simple, most perfect thing. Like, sometimes the kids don't really need something big. It's not about, you don't need a tangible, right? It could be something really meaningful that isn't necessarily external, right? So that was worked out. By the way, she was so prompt dependent before this that mom couldn't do anything for herself until her daughter was out the door. So this was a significant, and she was 8 years old, significant first step was teaching her that there are tasks related to time and space as it relates to life, right? Life has a series of tasks. Life has a series of events. And if I can anchor that in time and space, what I mean is, what time is it and where should I be? Time and space. Then I can start to learn how to consistently follow that. And now I'm building this relationship between my present self and my future self and anchoring that difference, right? So was this a win every day? No, because there's some dysregulation there, some tough morning where her mood wasn't quite regulated to the point where she could feel the success of this as easily, but she had more success than failures, which is really we want, right? Compound interest of better days than worse days. I build on better days. Make sense? So what does this mean? Well, there's two things. Working memory has two components. There's nonverbal and verbal. Verbal is the language. Do you see where it says, I get dressed? That's verbal. Do you see the picture? Nonverbal. If you want to talk about dysregulation and you want to talk about, kind of the core challenge with kids with ADHD and this executive function profile is they lack a clear nonverbal relationship between their future self. What do I look like? So develop it. What does it look like? This is what it looks like. It looks like me brushing my teeth, a smile on my face, and it's like 7:15 in the morning. That's what I look like. That's the nonverbal. And you anchor those. Now, by the way, Samantha was really into this. Why is that important? I can't just show Samantha, oh, Samantha, I came up with a schedule for your mornings. Nope. Sit down with your child and come up with it with them. Have them be in charge. They'll love it. It's so rewarding.
Dr. Murphy, I have a few questions.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
One in the chat going back. Would Bandura's monitor, judge, react model be similar to metacognitive approach?
Metacognitive approach. What's approach mean?
So actually, you kind of already answered that for me. I was just thinking about like when we teach children to kind of think about what happened, but you went into it after I asked that question. It's really about kind of guiding them through it, getting them to think about what they're doing, what they're thinking about.
Yeah, is it Mina?
Mena.
Yeah, it's so hard as a parent to engage in the metacognitive process. And I'm going to geek out with you a minute with some terms because this is kind of fun. But what it means is I want my child thinking. Okay, if I'm thinking and they're not, there's a problem, right? So how do I get my child to think? I ask them open-ended questions. What does tomorrow look like? Okay, so that engages. Now I can't ask them that as they're kicking my shin, having a temper tantrum, right? No, so I'm teasing with that example, but like if my child's emotionally dysregulated, that it's not a time for that. That's just a time for teaching coping, right? But if they're in their frontal lobe and we're just having a planning session and we're having a family meeting or having a Friday night kind of planning out, reflecting on the week, then it's a time to ask those kinds of open-ended questions. So this is a great example. So in doing this, I'm going to go back to Samantha on this for a second. See all these questions I have here? This is where you teach real deep executive function skills, because now she has a reference of who she's trying to be. And now I can go deep into the analysis of evaluating that person. How am I doing? Well, let's look at the past. Let's say, for example, we'll use this calendar for a minute. It's Friday. We have the whole week we've just gone through, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's Friday. How did your week go? Samantha looks at this chart that's been checked off. She's gone up there and checked it all off at the end of her mornings. She's able to evaluate her past self. That's reflecting, right? I can't problem solve if I can't evaluate and reflect. Now I'm going to ask her, okay, what would you like to see better? Where would be some areas that you improve? Now she's taking her past self and moving towards the future and saying, I'd like my future self to work on these areas. You're like, yeah, Dr. Murphy, but I want to talk about homework. This is a building block to the same issues we talk about all the time related to academics, except this is life. Homework isn't. I hate talking about homework. I know you like, but our kids have to go to school. I know, but this is life. My child getting up in the morning on their own sets everything in motion for the rest of their day. Their confidence, their feelings of self-efficacy. And what does that word mean? That means I can go out into the world and solve my own problems. That's what that means. And if my mom, I'm saying it's developmentally, right? So you just think about, so not to get too lost in this topic, but this client has comorbid conditions. So a real great young woman, she's in her 20s. And so she gave me permission to share this. She's awesome. But she went around and took pictures of herself doing all these sorts of morning routines, evening routines, and it transformed her regulation, her ability to regulate her mood, regulate her thinking, because she had these images that represent nonverbal images that she was able to anchor her day around, her morning around. And she used
Dr. Murphy, can I ask a question about prompt dependence? So my kiddo's pretty prompt dependent. Do you have a step in between going from prompt dependent to a visual schedule like this, or do you just kind of just push it?
Well, I don't. So going back to something like this, Samantha was prompt dependent through the whole thing, and it was an emotional roller coaster the whole way. But after getting Samantha's buy-in, it became kind of pretty black and white that Samantha wanted this as much as anybody. She wanted the independence. She wanted the roadmap to success in her mornings. She wanted to feel better about her relationship with her mom. All these factors led to this was really a no-brainer. Was it perfect? No, but they had a reference to celebrate their progress, even if it was a tough day.
So as they continued, the prompts kind of decreased as she had buy-in to this.
Yeah. So what you want to do as any parent is you want to try to get some kind of intermediary prompt. So what you did, so this schedule becomes the prompt.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a high reliance on an external figure, which happens to be mom, on task dependency or on kind of transitions, right? So there's this prompt that happens. So you think behaviorally, okay, how do I replace myself? Well, I replace myself by coming up with a schedule. And now I reference that. I just say questions like, how's your morning going? What's next? I'm prompting, but I'm prompting from a metacognitive perspective. I'm prompting from a frontal lobe perspective. I'm asking open-ended questions, right?
Yep.
Now, you know what's next. You don't need to ask her what's next. It's a rhetorical question that you're not supposed to answer. You're just asking the question because you're trying to keep them engaged in what I look like next, right? So and that slowly starts to replace the parental figure onto something that's maybe more age appropriate, but far more, developmentally appropriate to their growth. Because now they're not having to rely on mom, right? They're now building their own confidence and doing it on their own. So, and if they come up with this with you, then the success is going to be more natural.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Any others? So, so in terms of like, this is Sarah Ward's work. I don't know if their district has done trainings with Sarah Ward, but she's out of Concord. And she's just really the guru of EF skills from the very beginning. And she's the reason I named, I started what I'm doing. I built a lot of what I started doing on her work. And their speech, and the principles are based on speech and language pathology. And if there's any SLPs in the room, you would understand what I mean. But they kind of train, you train your child. You don't have to do this, but what I want for the sake of this is what you can start to do is you can take life examples. So if you were to kind of look at life or tasks that have 3 parts for any task. Okay, there are 3 parts to any task. There's the get ready, the do, and the done. What does that mean? Well, every task has a finished product. Think about wrapping a gift. What does this toy look like wrapped? Well, that's the done. What do these pancakes look like when they're done? Well, this is what they look like. Now, part of this is where the dysregulation can happen, or the executive function challenge can happen, is sometimes our kids, you know this, they jump right into the do. Right? They don't sit there and see what the future looks like. They don't see what done looks like. They don't say, this is what I see my pancakes looking like, or this is what I see my writing or project to look like. They just jump right in. They don't even read the directions, right? What we want to help them do is to see that things actually have a finished product. And then as we help them, they can actually start to see that I have a do list, and then I have a kind of a get ready, and I can start working backwards in order to move forward. And so a lot of this has to do with teaching our kids that big picture versus details. So I just did a screening today, and a parent was like, my kid just sees the details and doesn't see the big picture. Yeah, that's kind of the do of life. I just see the details of what I need to do, kind of. I don't see the big picture of how all of those do's fit together into a big finished product. Okay? Which is, sometimes you see the symptom of that where they'll jump in and they'll look at their homework, and they don't have a plan for their homework. They just jump right into something. And they spend 2 hours on one assignment, not realizing that they have these 2 other assignments to do that were going to require more time. Right? Because they just jump right in. So part of the fun of this type of thinking is take general tasks, especially cooking, and use it as a chance to try to train your child to see tasks in categories, in parts. What are we making? Oh, let's make brownies today. Cool. Well, what does brownies look like when they're all done? Right. And you can start to have fun with this. This is, I don't know, but I don't think I'd be making like a brownie like Sunday a la mode here. But in terms of making ice cream, okay, what do I need? What does ice cream look like when it's done? Well, it'd be in a bowl and it'd have me, how many scoops we're going to have in here? We're going to have 2 scoops. What is that? That's the nonverbal working memory. What does it look like when it's done is the nonverbal. The verbal is okay, what are the tasks that I need to organize in my mind, but maybe on paper that helps me to get there? And the get ready is, okay, what do I need to get? Oh, I need to get scoop, right? I need to get the bowl. I need to get a spoon. I need to get my notebook out. I need to get my homework. So we can start to have fun with this process with our kids. So what category was this? Is this a picture that represents get ready, do, or done? Right? So this represents like, wow, okay, I got a messy backpack. What does a messy backpack look like if it's organized and neat? Right? So if it looks like something, okay, well, maybe there's I don't know, you have a couple of notebooks, maybe 3 notebooks, right? I see that, oh, maybe in the front pouch, I'm gonna have my ear pod things, right? And then what else do I have here? I have, the papers. Yeah, the papers. So I'm gonna kind of have the papers inside each folder. So they'll kind of be, organized. So we have science, history, and math. So what I'm starting to help them see is if I had my backpack organized, what would it look like? What would done look like? And starting to help them see this relationship between tasks having 3 parts to it. All right, now this gets a little bit, so that's just like a strategy. It's a strategy of helping our children to see information and being aware that information has categories, right? Life is a series of tasks, and tasks have categories. There's order to it. And teaching our kids to see that and be aware of it allows them to be more successful. This is a lot of fun. Raise your hand if you have ever walked into a dirty kitchen, right? We all have. So let's take this as a teaching opportunity for our children, right? So you have to kind of translate this to be age appropriate, but let's imagine that you're my 7-year-old. And you send them into the kitchen and say, okay, I need you to go clean up the kitchen. How's that going to go? Right? I send my 13-year-old and I say, clean up the kitchen. How's that going to go? Well, it'll go differently, right? Still may not be great. It'll be different. What we can help our children do is before we even send them into the kitchen, we help them to see and articulate the different parts of the kitchen, right? Because what they don't see a plan when they walk into a kitchen like this. Wouldn't see it. It's like their bedrooms. If you send them to go clean up the bedroom, same thing. They just don't see the categories of the bedroom, right? You have to help them see that. And it's great to practice, right? You have a closet, you have a bed, right? You have a desk, you have a floor, each requiring a scaffolded approach to going from dirty to clean. So I talk a lot, visualizing, verbalizing is a speech and language terminology that's been, it's been used for way too long. But what this means is if you can visualize, meaning what do I look at and can I describe it? Can I verbalize my plan? Or do you ever have your child go do 3 things? I want you to go to your room. I want you to get your jacket, and I want you to brush your teeth, and I want you to come back down here, right? Okay, JD, that's my son's name. Repeat what I just said are the 3 things I want you to go do, right? So, okay, tell me where your jacket is. Okay, well, it's up the stairs, room's on the left. My jacket, I think, is on the floor next to my bed. Great, okay. Where's your toothbrush? Oh, the toothbrush is down the hallway next to the sink. Okay, which side of the sink? Oh, the left side of the sink. What color is your toothbrush? Oh, it's a blue toothbrush. I have no idea what color. I'm going to find that out. So what we're trying to do is, again, as he describes that process of the tasks, he's anchoring this verbal, nonverbal relationship in his process of in his verbalization. Same thing can happen in the kitchen. Let's take this kitchen, for example. What do we start? Right? So we help him come up with a scaffolded approach to tackle the kitchen. Now, this is probably an overwhelming kitchen for any 7-year-old, but if you go in there and help, you come up with a plan beforehand. Let's tackle the kitchen and let's break it up into categories. Where do you see sections of the kitchen? What do you see as being categories or areas that we can kind of break the kitchen into? Oh, this is a fun game. Oh, I see a countertop. Yeah, okay, cool. Countertop's one area. What else do you see? Well, I see a sink. All right, cool. What else do you see? I see dishes. Awesome. So what you're helping to do is you're helping to build this relationship around space, right? And tasks as it relates to, taking something like a dirty kitchen and starting to see the categories within it. It's like the writing process. It's the same cognitive process. It's just you're using life examples. You use that same process when you're starting to think about a paper. I'd have to develop an outline. I have to develop a web. I have to organize my thinking into categories that describe as, around a theme of a paragraph. Oh, I have to transition that to another paragraph. So it's the same cognitive process. Okay. What I'm trying to help you do with these examples is, as parents, when are the opportunities during one day where I can pause and teach? And if it's a clean room, great. If it's a kitchen, great. A room. Now, our kids are really good at making it look like this. That's okay. That's okay. What's really hard for them, for many of our children, is to make it go back to organization, right? To bring the order back to the chaos. So we have to help them do that. We have to help them see a plan through verbal and nonverbal communication. All right, let's just survey the environment. Let's go to your door, stand in your doorway, and let's talk, let's visualize and verbalize a plan. All right, well, let's see there's different parts. I see there's a counter over there. I see there's a bed there. I see there's like a table over here on the left. I see a desk where you do your homework, which you can't anymore because there's so much junk on there. All right, let's start breaking this up into categories and let's talk about, you can write it down too, but sometimes just that discussion could be enough to initiate a clear idea of what it looks like done and how the plan can be executed to get there. You do that 100 times, you're building skills. Questions about that? Same thing. I just had these
you
images.
Have what's an example of like a smaller scale? Like, because like a clean kitchen or a clean room might be like, that could escalate emotionally depending on the age of your child. Do you have like I don't know, I see the sink now, so that my brain's kind of making me think we can go there. But like what's an example of like a smaller, maybe?
Well, for example, like
just because like
a family room could be a good example, right? So sometimes at the end of the day, there can be a family effort to clean the house before bed. I don't know, just an example, right? It's like, okay, getting ready for bed. All right, JD, you're in charge of the family room. Typically, a family room is not a disaster unless that's also the playroom. But you think of an environment of the house that can be manageable. Maybe it's where the shoes are, right? Because sometimes the shoes get all scattered around, and maybe that's just an area that they can target. Okay, I want you to go kind of clean the mudroom area. But yeah, you want something that's accessible. But honestly, the truth is I would do this with JD first and talk about the process. And use my own language and my own verbalization to help build them up to be able to do something like this on their own. But yeah, you start with being a team effort. How about you just do you're in charge of the toothpaste? Well, what do you mean? You're in charge of cleaning up the toothpaste. What do you think we should do first? How many pieces of toothpaste do we see on the counter? Like, you just start asking these questions. What you're doing is you're just talking through this future plan, this cognitive process that has everything to do with the frontal lobe, right? If it's emotional, then you got to pull it back a little further. You got to continue to meet them at their level. It's emotional because that's a big task that you're asking them to do. and maybe their working memory is not there because it's been you're not going to tackle something like this at the end of a school day unless they can handle it, right? I haven't gotten into the working memory stuff, but maybe I should. Working memory is extremely important to take care of, right? If your child struggles, already has, so let's say, for example, every morning you start off with a full tank of working memory. By the end of the day, depending on the child, that working memory tank is lower, if not empty. Here's a good test. If you put a demand on your child when they get off the bus, how does it go? It's a meltdown. Okay, then that's an evaluation of their working memory being tapped out. They need to refuel, recharge. And that there's a couple ways that can happen depending on your child. It can be exercise, it can be chilling out, it can be eating, it can be just downtime, relaxation. There's a lot of ways to refuel that, right? That's kind of the working memory. Working memory also plays into the classic I forgot, right? Raise your hand if your child is always saying I forgot, right? Oh, I didn't remember. That has a lot to do with the being able to manage in working memory the information from the day and not having the storage capacity or the attentional skills to manage all that information throughout the day. So yeah, they did forget. So working memory is really important to support. And most people would, you support working memory a couple ways. Most important way to support working memory is writing things down, which is why having a planner, being able to have a process to write things down is so important for middle school, high school kids with working memory.
Could we go to a couple questions in the chat?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. What are some of the strategies? And first of all, this is all great, a compliment too, for time. What are some of the strategies help for parents that have ADHD themselves, very important, and struggle with being able to keep it consistent with some of these strategies?
I'm probably talking about the slide that relates to this. Any adult with ADHD that has found their success in life probably can attest it to finding out what they were good at and learning how to capitalize on what they're good at in terms of a career and a future, right? Most successful adults can attest to that. The other thing they can attest to is they learned how to persevere through the challenges that presented to them in their journey through life, right? So those two things alone, if you have a child with ADHD, being able to kind of connect with a parent through that I think is immensely valuable, right? Because you can relate. Yeah, man, I know that sucks. I know this is hard. I was in your shoes. This isn't easy, right? That's powerful, right? I don't think you have to be a different parent because maybe you can't. Like maybe you can't be the organized parent. That's okay. Like it's not about being a parent you can't be. I think that's going to cause more stress and struggles in the home. I just think it's also just about connecting with your kid and letting them know, who you are and how that can bridge an important relationship, but also give their child a chance to know that, yeah, you'll figure out how to rely on your strengths to take care of yourself. You'll figure out how to overcome those challenges like I did. We talk about, we take a strength-based approach in all of our coaching because it's so important. Our kids get their asses kicked all day long. No one needs to tell them what they suck at. They already know. What we want to continue to do as much as possible is to continue to help them see the strengths, even if it's a perceived weakness. It's also a strength. Yeah, if you're stubborn, it's called persistence, right? If you're impulsive, it can be creative, right? If you are a risk taker, you're a trailblazer. Like there's so many strengths that can be seen in the chaos in their struggles that we have to help them see it. So important. That's the foundation that's going to build the emotional resilience, the self-efficacy, and their future. Their future is not going to be built on their deficits. There's too many successful people out there that failed through school miserably. If they leave school feeling like a failure, then we didn't do our job. Yeah, there are plenty of Fs. So yeah, on paper, they probably looked like a failure, but their path in life was not shaped based on their academics. Their success in life is going to be shaped somewhere else. And you have to let them find it. And you have to help them see it. Right?
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And like, I think that, I mean, even if parents aren't, everyone has a struggle, like, and
Yeah.
you know, I think to recognize that with your children is so important, because you're not coming to them from a place of perfection, which no one can.
Yeah,
and
you really
Plymouth,
make a point.
thank you for that.
Yeah, you know, I'm a big believer that life is hard, and my children kind of you know, they're my guinea pigs. I think life is hard. The game of life is how to make it easier. But I think what ends up happening is I think society tries to pretend that life is easy. And I think that sets them up for failure. Meaning, if life is easy, then I'm going to approach life as if it's supposed to be easy. So then when it's not easy, I had the wrong mindset. I can't handle it.
Yeah.
So if I'm developing this language of resilience and this language that life is emotional, life is tumultuous, our goal is to try to make the most of the life we live and to find the meaning in there and to find our purpose. And that's hard work. So we're shifting a little bit. We're tapping into that resilience. We're tapping into that self-efficacy, which is the building blocks of success when you think about what really matters, right? Being smart doesn't matter. Never has, right? It's what I do with the emotionality of life that allows me to break through and foster that grit, so that when I do figure out what I want to do with my life, I actually have the emotional resolve, the emotional fortitude to move in that direction and maybe go back to school because now I know why.
Yeah. You know, before we move on, I do have another question in chat about going back to working memory. What interventions improve working memory? Do you have any specific examples? That was a question in chat.
Yeah, great question.
Really
I would start with, so when we think about life, we should think about priorities of life. And I would say, have this lesson with your children. Teach them what priorities are. Now, priorities are pretty standard across all human race. First priority is health, right? Second priority is typically family. How do you know this? Well, if mom is sick, how's everyone else doing? Right? It's a good test. Okay. Second priority is family. Third priority can get a little different. Sometimes it has to do with a career, a job, a way to provide, something like that, right? Fourth priority has to do with hobbies, interests, pursuing passions in life, meaning things that I want to kind of spend my time on, social outings, things like that, right? Back to working memory, health. If I want to support working memory, I want to support my health. Stress management, exercise, sleep. One of the biggest reasons high school kids struggle is because has a lot to do with the elephant in the living room in sleep hygiene. Disastrous sleep habits. 2 good days, 3 bad days. And a lot of it might have to do with the inability to sleep. A lot of our kiddos, they really do struggle with sleep. So it can be a real medical conversation, but sometimes if it's just a conversation of distractibility, because something online is more interesting to them than getting a good night's sleep. But either way, it's a huge factor in supporting working memory. That's number one, because wake up with as full a tank as possible. That's the first step, right? Second one is start to develop that relationship with my future self so that I don't have to deal with the stress of the day or the chaos of the day, because I see clearly as possible what my day looks like. And I have a managed plan for my day that helps with the stress because I'm meeting expectations. You want to increase stress, increase the gap between unmet expectations, right? So I want to kind of bring those back to equilibrium. And that's huge. The other thing for working memory is having a writing process for tracking information. We do a lot of adult coaching. And one of the main themes with adult coaching is working memory strategies. Because you're in 10 meetings a week. And how do I manage all that information through those 10 meetings where I'm project managing something for the next week? So very much realistic to being a student as well. How do I go from class to class to class to class, maintaining the information in those classes? Is that helpful? I'm trying to, sometimes the simplest kind of answers are the ones you can build on. Anything more complicated should be built on top of those 3 or 4. Exercise, I didn't mention too much of that, but that's pretty straightforward. 20 minutes a day.
No, she did. She responded. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, please keep asking questions.
Okay.
So homework. So you guys ready to think for a second? What are my child's 3 passions or interests? No, you can't judge it. Right? Because if gaming's number 1, write it down. What are my child's passions and interests? It can also, so you can put strengths in there too. Sometimes what they're good at may not be what they're interested in yet. Too many kids are good at math, but they hate their math teacher. That's different. Recognizing that this kiddo is going to be an amazing accountant someday if they can overlook the fact that they hated their freshman or their middle school math teacher. Okay, so what are my child's passions, interests, strengths? I gotta know. If I can get to 10, I'm a rock star parent. I want to talk about that all the time. Right, I always say a kiddo gets up in the morning after getting their ass kicked yesterday. What a strength. Wow, you're getting up again, man. Yesterday was a rough day for you, and I'm really proud of you. You are the most resilient kid I've ever met. I mean, they could be going to school with 3 Fs, but they're going to school. So anyways, just how we frame things can matter more than anything else. These are the areas that I need to let my child fail or fall to learn. Now, this has a little bit to do with, like, I might be lifting my child up in certain areas, and these may be areas that I want to gut check myself on and be like, you know what, it's time. It's time to let my child handle this problem on their own and learn. I'll be there for them when they start asking questions around how to solve this problem. But right now, they don't even know it's a problem because I'm helping out too much.
Can I just make a comment about that?
Yeah.
I think that's probably the hardest thing about being a special needs or a special education parent is letting go. I haven't got there yet. I don't know if anybody else has. How do you suggest we get there? Like how do
I'll get to the next slide. This is a great question, Danielle. And yeah, it's not about giving up. It's not about letting go as much as thoughtfully saying, I'm going to start relinquishing control, right? It's like, how do I do that? Well, we start to think of these as problems, unsolved problems. If you want to take a Ross Green perspective, this is all Ross Green. I don't give him credit on here. I just say his name. He's awesome. Livesinthebalance.org. You should all know who he is. If you have a child that his first book was called The Explosive Child back in the 80s. I don't know if anybody's read that book, but it put him on.
My parents read that book, but it was not about me as a sibling.
Yes, so it's been around forever. So he's awesome. His website's awesome, but he talks about 3 buckets. Really, all that matters is you want to start to think about problems based on the problems that are immediate, safety, life or death kind of stuff, right? And the problems that are near future that I want to put in the B bucket. And then there's problems that I want to shelf. I want to shelf that unsolved problem. Why? It's just something I don't really know what to do with right now. So those may be those unsolved problems may be the ones you continue to support, right? And then you say, okay, this is the 1 or 2 problems that I want to start relinquishing control over and starting to give, kind of give ownership back to my child in certain areas, right? For example, say a morning routine. My child's awful with the morning routine, but I'm willing to relinquish control and give my child a chance to own this. And we have a process to do that, but I don't think I can let them wake up on their own. It's too difficult. It's a problem I don't know if they can handle. I think it's going to still fall on me to get them up, but I think they can get through everything else. Meaning, so you're starting somewhere, but you're not setting your child up for failure, and you're not putting the full burden. You're picking one problem or one. I would say one. I call it like a routine, right? One section of a day, and I'm going to start, really working on my child to do that on their own, realizing it's going to take time. Okay. But we as parents have to make a decision when we think about the overwhelmingness of all the areas that I manage. Well, I'm not going to have my child go grocery shopping tomorrow, but someday they will, because they can't live on their own without doing that, whatever. Whatever. So there's big milestones around driver's license and, and doing laundry and maybe making a meal or cleaning up after dinner or cleaning the bathroom, whatever the problem is. Just you pick something that's meaningful enough to say, this is what I want to focus on. Or you sit down with your child and you say, these are the areas that I want to start having a conversation around you taking over. Right? Sometimes we find ourselves really surprised by what our kids would say when we just kind of open up with them, if they're capable of doing that. Because sometimes they want for themselves what, in essence, we want for them anyways. It's just they don't know how to get there. Right? So couple of resources that relate to the problem-solving journey. So I got 10 minutes left, I think. By the way, if you want something that teaches time, this is the only tool. There is no other tool that teaches time. Right? So if you have 10 of these in your house and you're constantly talking about the passage of time and you're saying, there's tools you can get to kind of fit on this, but this is an amazing tool. This is the only type of clock that actually shows the passage of time. So if time is a real challenge for your child, they have time blindness, the temporal horizon is really limited in terms of age appropriateness, then this would be what you want to have in your house. And you want to kind of develop strategies as a parent to always be talking around when things are, how long something takes. How long do you think that'll take for you to finish that meal? All right, let's look at the clock. Let's see if you're right. Right, just talking about tasks and how long things take, that could be a really awesome natural way of teaching that skill. So back on task, I just got a little tangent there, sorry. So first what we want to do is, in kind of this problem solving journey, is relinquish ownership. Okay, start to imagine the problem's not mine, it's my child's. Then I want to connect and engage them. Whole Brain Child is an amazing book on really developing an understanding between self-regulation and executive functioning, more importantly around emotion and logic, downstairs, upstairs part of the brain. If you've anybody, someone can give thumbs up if they found that book really meaningful. But all of our parent coaching work we do is built on Whole Brain Child type of language. Why? Because typically when we're working with children, there's an emotional dysregulation that needs to be addressed. So we want to help parents to be able to navigate the emotionality with their children and help them stay in their frontal lobe or climb to the frontal lobe to be able to make decisions, right? So connecting with our kids is super important as a step one. Step two is helping them move through their problems on their own, right? Sometimes we can just get into the problem and tell our children how to do it. That's okay. Time to time, that's necessary. But if I can catch that moment and engage with my child to say, I notice. So this gets into kind of another piece of this. So I love this language. This is Ross Green language. It's so good. I need real simple language when I parent. Like, I can sometimes get a little supercharged. So I want real accessible language that allows me to gut check myself. I don't want to be solving my kids' problems all the time. I want to catch myself before I start to solve the problem for them. So that's step one, is I want to find that moment to catch myself. And then I want to take that breath and say, how can I engage my child in owning the problem and moving through it, right? So I notice you're struggling to get ready for bed. What's up? You're not going to get much of an answer at first. Because what you're asking them to do is you're asking them to evaluate, right? Reflect, and think and ponder and all these frontal lobe type of verbs, right? And that's not going to come so easily at first. But if they've already developed a working idea of what their evening routine looks like because you've worked this out with them, then they are better equipped to be able to think through what's wrong. Oh, I'm off track. I'm down in the basement. I know I should be upstairs brushing my teeth. How do you know you should be upstairs brushing your teeth? Well, because it's 7:30 and that's what I'm supposed to be. Okay, so what do you think you should do next? Oh, I should probably go upstairs and go into the bathroom, brush my teeth. All I'm doing is I'm just engaging and helping them work through a life challenge. And that's staying on task related to a milestone of an evening, which is getting to bed on time. Trying to remove my emotion from it. So I keep my child in their frontal lobe so I don't get fired up and, and start to cause a meltdown, parent meltdown. Does that make sense? Another great question as you think through that, kind of what's up. And the other one is like, okay, what's your plan? Right? Don't ask this in big context to be like, what's your plan to get all of your homework done for the past week? No, too much, right? But when you can think about it as simply as when you catch your child struggling, right? Or there's a problem that they're not addressing. Maybe they have to communicate with their teacher about something going on tomorrow. You know what the plan should be. You probably even told them. Problem is, it's your plan, it's not theirs. So when you start asking this question, you're engaging them in the decision-making process. And now you're just going to facilitate possible options. So what if that doesn't go as the way you see it going? What's an alternative? What if you forget? Let's imagine you remember. How are you going to feel if you remember to tell that teacher what you just said? Right? What are some excuses? Ants are automatic negative thoughts. It's just a way of helping our kids track excuses. Excuses can be a problem if we let them go unrecognized. So with our children, we're always about stomping ants. What are some excuses that I'm coming up with today? I love I don't like that teacher. Oh, I just don't like the teacher. Oh, that's a great excuse. What do you want to do about that one? Because that excuse seems to be directly in the way of your goals. What do you mean? Well, it seems like you don't like the teacher is impacting your ability to get the work done and your ability to see your way through the assignments and get a good grade. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, so do you have to keep on using that excuse, or can we start to figure out how to win and stomp that excuse and get through it? So again, working on problem solving, sometimes a kid will say, I forgot. It's great. When I say I forgot, I don't have to worry about the problem anymore. I just say I forgot, and people just think like, oh, great, we could just move on. So when I forget, now it's becoming an excuse as opposed to it probably was legitimate, but now it's just becoming this excuse that allows me to move on and not have to delve into the problem solving process, which requires frontal lobe, which requires working memory, which requires problem solving skills, which requires executive function skills. So, we can kind of appreciate why they do that. Yes, so we don't say we nag, we just get told we nag, right? So, but we do know that there's things that we complain about most of the time on a daily basis. If you want to talk about A, B, and C buckets, think of those as the topics that you want to tackle, right? So what do I nag about? I don't know. What comes to your mind as being things that I nag about? What are the things that I complain about more times than not? And how can I relinquish ownership of that problem and make it a problem that my child can develop a plan to manage or resolve and work through, or this unmet expectation per se? maybe developmentally they can't handle it. So we need more of an intervention, or we need more supports or more scaffolding to help them be successful. Danielle, the problem with these presentations is that sometimes I can be so broad and general that it's super hard to kind of drill down to like specific cases. So I totally appreciate that sometimes I say things and it's so general that it's like, I'm not sure how this relates to my life as a parent. So it's always a fine line between answering questions, which is super helpful, so that I'm not too broad and general and being kind of fluffy in my descriptions and examples. So I appreciate the question you asked earlier on that note. This goes back to the parent, kind of the apple tree example, where if I'm a parent with ADHD, how do I raise a child to be consistent? Because I'm not really that consistent. True. But part of it is the reflection in the journey, right? And the journey together through maintaining an effort to maintain consistency. So it's a really important language because our kids, we're going to fail a lot. And that's okay. What can be really helpful is to always have something to refer back to get back to a consistently positive and productive rhythm in life, right? So sometimes being in a routine can fend off the chaos and stress of life. Having consistent expectations as a parent can keep things calm and predictable. Even if our kid doesn't like them, your curfew is 8 p.m. every night, or it's 10 p.m. every night, consistently, right? So what we do consistently as parents can sometimes lead by example. But sometimes, even when we teach our children, there is a consistency to life. We just have to find it. It's really meaningful. And so these slides are really for reference purposes, but I would say the biggest thing, a part of the work I do, is no matter what it is, if I can come up with a positive solution and then I can consistently follow it, I'm going to be moving in the right direction. I talk a lot about compound interest. Even if it's 1% better each day, 1% better each day compounded is massive growth over a year. So if I'm helping my child get consistently better 10% of the time, they're going to make real gains over a year, over 6 months. So that's what we talk about, consistently getting to bed at a decent time. Wow, what a meaningful goal. Right? We talk about 0 zeros. It's a mindset around homework getting passed in. Sometimes our student athletes or kids that, really want to make this happen. Like they actually, once you say 0 zeros, it becomes this OCD-like focus. Because now that's something tangible, it's like all or nothing, which sometimes is helpful, right? I talk to college students all the time. If you miss one class, what do you think you're going to give yourself permission to do? Oh, I'm going to give myself permission to miss more than one class. Yes. So when you think of 0 zeros, it's a permission, or it's the refusal to give yourself permission to miss one assignment. Sometimes that's a carrot. Sometimes that sinks in, right? This
Can
is
I get
more
a question on right now?
Yeah. What's that?
We've talked a lot about more like macro time management, especially like these routines and like a great visual. Do you have any like strategies or suggestions for a kid who struggles with just like small blocks of time, like a timed test, or like even just the pressure of time? That's like, I know in my house, that's where we really struggle. Like just knowing there's like a timer on, like some kind of time on an assignment, or a limited amount of time she can work on something, that like kicks up the stress level, just knowing that that time limit is there alone, even if she can complete a task in that amount of time, knowing that it's there can sometimes be troubling. And I think that's true as adults too, is you're like, oh, if I got to get out of the house by like 3 o'clock, like you kind of like that panic will set in, like, even though they're manageable, like you still have that like franticness, I guess.
Yeah. So some people that have like maybe a lower processing speed, can find those moments super overwhelming, right? And some people that have maybe a working memory challenges can also find those moments super overwhelming. If you add on top of that, emotional sensitivity, like maybe underlying anxiety type of conversation, those just kind of mix together into kind of a melting pot of unmet expectation. Because the expectation is, I already know I want to get this done. I don't need the timer to tell me that I need to get it done quickly. Now the pressure of the time telling me I need to get it done quickly is like adding more fuel to the fire. I mean, there's already enough fuel in the fire. I didn't need that additional fuel in the fire, right? Now you put that on there, now this fire is blazing out of control, and all I'm thinking about is that stupid timer. Sometimes I think sometimes it has to do, there's no one answer I can give you, but sometimes it has to do with developmentally. Sometimes those expectations are too much for kids to handle. It's like, the burden of time management. Some people, they thrive under that, right? Those are the ER doctors. Those are the people that thrive under pressure, and they can go off into an ER world and save people's lives because they thrive under last minute decision-making. The rest of us, no, we have to learn that extra time is our friend, and it's something.
Yeah, sometimes we just try to focus on like, what would be the consequence? What happens if we don't finish? Like, we don't finish. Like, there's no disciplinary action. There's no academic suffering for now. We just have to, don't stress, do our best, so to speak.
Yeah, you redefine the expectation. The expectation is not that you finish on time.
Yeah. And then maybe we do, and we can celebrate that.
Yeah. Yeah. Our kids are super aware. They're so hypersensitive to what the expectations are. And sometimes when we just define what they are, so they can, because sometimes it's a little vague, so they get anxious about the general anxiety of life or the general expectations of life. But as soon as we name it, and then we start to reshape it based on their needs, right? Their advocacy styles, right? Things they need. Then it starts to help redefine how their relationship with it, which is really important. Simple as extra time, simple as, right? If you need to take a break in the middle of a test, you don't just sit there and freeze, right? I need a strategy. What do? Well, I raise my hand and I ask the teacher if I can go for a walk, right? I start to develop a strategy that relates to that one moment. But time can, for a lot of our kids, is not their friend. They do not have a positive, warm, nurturing relationship with time. They're always up against it, and it tends to win. In their eyes, tends to win a lot of the time because they always feel like a victim of it, right? Other questions? So when we talk about monitoring progress, we talk about time management, we talk about planning. These are just tools. This is an old slide. It has Dover Sherborne on there, but Aspen is a platform that kids check grades, teachers check grades. Schoology is similar, Google Classroom similar, Canvas is similar. It's called LMS, Learning Management Platforms. But that's not always the best place for monitoring progress because sometimes it can be the symptom of the struggle. Oh crap. So speaking of symptom, I went 5 minutes over and I'm still kind of talking like I haven't. So I'm not sure what you want to do with that, Danielle, Kim, but I had a feeling that would happen. Actually, I'm in pretty good shape. I've gotten pretty far, but these are slides that I can share out later. Planners are so important to our children's development, so important because they need to anchor their attention into something, right? So sometimes parents are helping to fill this out with their kid. Sometimes our kids are not refusing to use a planner outright because they're going to say it's all online. So that's a conversation. It's even as a coach, it's complicated. So I don't have a direct answer. I will always say having a plan is better than no plan. So a planner is a tool for planning. What are you using? Nothing. So this is just the best one. Again, I saved homework conversation to the end because I feel like there's so many building blocks that build success to make this successful. Okay. If I can follow a morning routine independently, then I can follow an evening routine independently. If I can follow an evening routine independently, then I can follow a homework routine independently, right? It's the same cognitive process. Now I sit down and start doing the work. Study skills cannot happen without homework skills. So don't talk about tests, don't talk about quizzes until your child has demonstrated to themselves and to their parents that they have a homework skill routine. Meaning I sit down and I attend to homework. I attend to stuff that's due tomorrow. Studying has to do with something that's due in 3 days. Right? Study has to do with the content and how I learn it. I always say, do homework like it matters and you don't have to study as much. Every kid gets that. Just do homework like it matters and you don't have to study as much. It's true. They always find that out when they follow that example. If you can, I would say homework should be done in a common area. Proximity control. It's when a parent is near a child to promote engagement. What's the delay? What's the reward? You can talk about rewards. You can talk about incentives. When you get your homework done, you get to earn this. Let's talk about what you can earn after your homework. Maybe it's free time. Maybe it's video games. Maybe it's, dessert. I don't know. But you get dessert when your homework's done. After dinner, you go up, do your homework, come down and get dessert. Or you do it at the table and we do it together. But make it a positive experience, make it a positive routine, make it a proactive one. Maybe it's super hard for our kid to do their homework because it's developmentally, they're not ready for it. I'd go back to the school for that one and try to work out some support plan. If they can't do that, then you try to make it as a positive and engaged experience as possible. Why? Well, because the connection you have with your child is more important than whether or not the homework gets done. They're going to need you much longer than they need that homework assignment. That's hard to do, but it's true. I'm going to pause there. I've covered a lot. I've said a lot. You guys have asked some great questions. What else do we have in our minds? Oh, it's not so bad.
Oh, we do have another question.
Cool.
How can we help a child that has challenging behaviors with simplest tasks? When receives rewards for doing well, the next task will be even more challenging.
Okay. Does this child know what the tasks are? Like, is there or is this like a prompt dependency, one task after the next?
Yeah, Laura, if you feel free, please feel free to, if you're comfortable to, unmute.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Hi. It's just like he is like the type like he will like have tantrums. Like I will like explain to him like what are the tasks. He also have a routine, but despite like telling him okay this is what we're gonna do, he will start like screaming, yelling, jumping up and down, like sometimes like when he does well I'll tell him like okay you're gonna have like a reward. After you give him the reward, the next thing he will not want to do it. Like he will start like screaming, yelling, like sometimes like hitting himself.
Yeah. That sounds really hard for both of you.
Yeah.
Right. And is this homework tasks or is this any task?
Any task.
Okay. And is he acting out? What would be the purpose of his acting out? Like, is it to avoid the task? Or is it for attention? Is it sensory? What do you think?
I don't like, I can't really tell exactly what he does, why he does it, but most likely he will want you to just say, okay, you don't have to do it anymore, but like sometimes like I'm just wondering like if he's looking for attention, but I'm really not sure why he does it.
Yeah. that gets a little bit into, and without knowing those pieces, it's hard to then say, okay, here's some interventions, like here's some strategies, because behavior has a purpose. You have to figure out his purpose. Like temper tantrum to avoid, temper tantrum to gain. If it's working, he's going to do it more often. That's all you got to think about.
Okay.
If the behavior is getting your child what they want, then they're going to do it more often. And so
okay.
what you have to figure out is what's the purpose of that behavior. And that's sometimes not easy to do, but if it's to avoid the task and it works, then you're training that behavior. So unfortunately, if it has been working, you have to change that behavior, and it's not going to be, something won't do overnight. It's going to have to be extinguished and then replaced. So when he does have those temper tantrums, you ignore it. And maybe that you have to ignore it for 15 minutes before they come back to the task. But ignoring it probably will work because you're going to be removing any type of attention.
Goes back to that 1%.
Yeah, and then he'll come back eventually, ideally, because maybe he wants to do well. Maybe he still wants to earn the reward that comes after the task because it's of interest. So he comes back and he works on that task. So that might happen a couple more times before he realizes, wow, my mom's figured me out. Right? So from a behaviorist standpoint, you have to kind of be unemotional about it if that's the reason for that behavior, and wait for him to come back to the table, hypothetically the table, but come back to the demand. And you have to be able to wait that out. Or you say, we'll come back to this later. You still have to do it. We'll come back to this later. Can I still earn the reward? No, but we'll get to this later. Whatever, you just kind of go back to the task. Eventually realize that behavior is not going to get him what he wants anymore. He may try a different one though. So you got to be prepared for that if he's clever.
Okay.
A lot of our kiddos are clever.
Laura, I just wanted to add too, next month we'll be presenting on applied behavior analysis, which is kind of what we're talking about is, seeing the antecedent to a behavior. So definitely join us for that one, because that could be really helpful in your situation.
Yeah, sticker chart, things like that. Token kind of rewards can be really helpful to curb those behaviors and move through tasks effectively. So yeah, it's hard to put on a parent though, without the training.
Mina has a question as well. I'm gonna let her take it.
Hi. So not only am I a parent, I have twin boys, and then I have a daughter with some significant challenges, but I'm also a school psychologist. And so my question to you is I thought that this presentation was excellent. Do you ever do similar things, or do you have something that you would ever present to like school psychologists or speech and language pathologists who maybe already have a little bit of background knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, did you notice how I was getting a little excited about the kind of like the technical stuff and kind of?
Yeah, I was too.
Yeah, so I've done presentations for South Shore Medical Center, some of their kind of clinicians around how to support parents in their clinical models to empower parents to be executive function coaches at home. Like, how do you help your child at home? Right. And so I have done that. That's been a lot of fun because you just get questions at a different level, but it's all professionals trying to navigate this complex.
So you would be open to that potentially?
Yeah, absolutely, it's fun. Okay. We've been doing trainings in districts with teachers as well, and that's been a lot of fun. You have this interesting discrepancy now, and that's not negative, but between new teachers that do understand, they are getting trained on executive function, skilled work, and then you have maybe more veteran teachers that never did. So
right. Well, and I feel like it's such a such a buzzword right now, and I'm at the elementary school level, so 2nd through 4th grade, and I think one of the big struggles, and you touched on it, is a 2nd or 3rd grader is going to have executive functioning issues because developmentally they haven't learned those things. So I think, I don't know, I like the way you framed things. I was taking notes because I felt like some of the language and examples you used would actually be super helpful, not only in talking with parents, but in talking with teachers too.
Yeah, well, thank you. I always feel like I got so much I can say. I'm not sure what's going to be helpful for the audience. So that's kind of what overwhelms me the most when I put these together is making sure that I'm putting something together that's helpful versus not. So thank you for that.
I don't know if you can see the chat, but you're just getting some positive praise too.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I'm just.
And I did, put in chat if anybody has any questions or things you'd like Dr. Murphy to address before we close. Again, feel free to unmute. If not, we'll let you close out with whatever other information you'd like to share. I know we're going to have the video and the presentation available to everybody. We could share that out with our group as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I have my email here. So if anybody has questions after the fact that may be a little personal to the group, feel free to, to share it out.
Thank you for making yourself available like that. We appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're kind of, in a way, in this together. So if what I have is, if what I know is helpful, I'm happy to share and give feedback. Sometimes I need to know more than what someone says in a text message, which is why I appreciate, I think was it Laura that came on to give, more background, because that can be helpful in terms of answering questions that can be helpful. But